Brian White is an expert. I don't know on what other things he is an expert on, but I know he is an expert on Tesla because I watch him regularly on YouTube. He is on a frequent guest on many YouTube channels, and he has a YouTube channel of his own called FutureAzA. Brian White, welcome.
Good morning. How are you, sir? Good to chat with you again.
You as well. So Tesla is an absolute phenomenon to me. Elon Musk is the real phenomenon, but his companies and the accomplishments that they continue to one up the last accomplishment with a new one are just mind boggling to me. And so we have been
Absolutely.
promised autonomy for a number of years, like 10. And I've enjoyed the beta test version of autonomous called full self driving for about 3 years, 2.5 years. And now we have the advent of the Robotaxi that was finally unveiled in Austin, Texas, just 10 days ago. And you were there. Tell us about
So this was a great program. First of all, yes, Tesla is to me, the absolute pinnacle of an American success story. This is a company that is very new. It was the first new car company to survive and reach scale production since Jeep, to give you some perspective. It is pretty incredible what they've done. And we've seen similar successes with Elon's other big companies, SpaceX, doing things that are impossible. Now, what he's done with cars, a little less impossible than reusing and launching rockets the way that SpaceX has. But this Robotaxi event shows that Tesla is, at worst, caught up with Waymo, who has already driven 10 million rides or something like that. It might just be 10 million miles of paid rides. And Tesla caught up on their launch day with a product that is very, very different than what Waymo offers. Yes, they'll both get you from point A to B, but the critical difference is the Tesla does it for 75% less cost up front in terms of the vehicle itself, and it's cheaper to operate, cheaper to juice up, cheaper to maintain. It checks all the boxes, and you got to wonder why no one else thought of this.
Well, John Delorean tried it. He came up with the Delorean automobile. I guess it was in the 80s, wasn't it? And it kind of reminds me of a Tesla. There was no talk about autonomy at that point, however. But Elon Musk did accomplish the what appeared to be the impossible by developing a new car company that developed then the best selling car, not in America, but in the world. The Model Y is the best selling automobile worldwide. Nobody really is even close to touching it. And then you add autonomy on top of that. Um, the autonomous car has the potential, does it not, to eliminate the 45,000 fatalities that occur on U.S. highways every year?
Absolutely. As you know, you follow Tesla. As you know, every year they put out a report that shows the safety levels, and it tracks a few different ways. It says, here's what the average crash or fatality rate is on the roads for all cars. Here's what it is for a Tesla that isn't even using full self driving, and it's much safer. And when full self driving is engaged, it's much safer still. And the real trick to solving driverless cars is the humans on the road. If there were no human drivers, it'd be a very simple problem. It would be like solving any other game. Games are made up of rules. And the reason it's been so tricky to solve self-driving is because driving is not a game of rules. It's a game of exceptions. Everything is an exception. And it seems that Tesla has managed to do that. And they did it not with some Waymo's approach. Waymo is, as you know, a company that is wholly owned by Google. They've been developing their driverless car system for about 15 years now. And their solution is start with an $80,000 Jaguar I-Pace, ship it halfway around the world to get all the sensors and cameras and LiDAR and radar glued onto it more or less, and then ship it to wherever it's going and use it. That car ends up costing between $150,000 and $200,000 by the time it's deployed, and it takes a good 6 months from the time it's manufactured and they start paying for it until they can actually even deploy it. Where Tesla takes a bit of a different approach. Yes, they have a cyber cab upcoming, and I'd love to tell you some of the genius behind that because I've had a chance to interview 5 of the engineers who designed and developed and built the first models. But they did it with a regular old Model Y, that best-selling car in the world. Imagine 10 years ago if you had bought a RAV4 and then the next day you saw on TV, oh, by the way, they're using that same car to do driverless rides in Phoenix or Houston or somewhere. It would blow your mind. And that's what Tesla did. It's a huge flex, in my opinion, to see a company take a regular old car that just rolled out of the factory and put it to work as a driverless vehicle.
So what do you think is holding back or constraining Tesla's market value right now in the stock market? I mean, it closed on Friday at 323, which is up from its March low of 230, but it doesn't seem to be able to get a lot of momentum of late. That you could argue either side of that coin, frankly. It did get up to 348 in the last 2 weeks, but that pales by comparison to the 426 high that we experienced back in December. So, what is constraining the stock performance in your opinion?
So, first thing before I answer that is I gotta thank you for actually knowing your topics. That's one thing I love about your show is it's like you bring on an expert and I'm listening to 2 experts, and that's wonderful.
Well, you're very kind to say that. I need to get a life, I guess, because I really actually love doing this stuff.
So the answer is right now the price to earnings ratio is too high for the stock market. There are a lot of emotional investors. They will buy it even if it's too high. They will sell it even if it's too low. Humans doing human things. One thing we've seen over the last year is a lot of long-term, big dollar investors say, you know what, for personal reasons, I'm going to go ahead and take my profit and call it a day. But what we've seen in equal numbers is institutional investors finally getting in. Tesla at one point was only 30%, like a year and a half ago, was only 30% owned by institutional investors. That's hedge funds, that's retirement funds, that's mutual funds. So that has shifted. It's now 60% institutional investors. Those folks are far less likely to make an emotional decision. They only care about the numbers. So what we're going to see in not this quarter, I suspect, but in the next year, 2, 5, what we're going to see is a growth in those earnings that would justify higher and higher stock price, because we've got not just the best-selling car in the world to look at, but this tidal wave of rideshare, basically, of an autonomous taxi. This doesn't just stand to eat into the market of Uber and Lyft and taxis. The price will be lower per mile. That will make the market expand. I drive to the airport because an Uber from my house would be $150 each way. You got to be cheaper than parking or I'm not going to do it. And my parking never gets to $300. It's a regional, pretty small airport in Portland, Oregon, an hour south of me. I live out in the country, but it's an hour away. It costs a lot of money. So we'll see that market expand. We'll see the revenue come in. And unlike Waymo or any of the other autonomous manufacturers looking to deploy in the U.S., Tesla has the advantage of scale. They can not just turn on the faucet. The faucet's already running. They just got to take a little bit of the water out of the stream and dump it into their own cup because the factory's already making this car and it's ready.
Well, back to my earlier question, though, there has been a softening of demand for the car, has there not?
It appears to me that there has been a softening of demand. The models S and X, the ultra fancy flagship models, are not selling as well as they used to. The Model 3, I think it's a wonderful car. My son just bought one. I helped him do that. We just took it on a 5,700-mile road trip. It's fantastic. And the Model Y is the best-selling car in the world, but the global market has softened a little bit as well. There is economic uncertainty around the globe, and that's going to impact it a bit. But
I
the
think you've hit
demand for
the
cars themselves,
I think
yeah,
you hit the
has
nail on
softened.
the head. I've been saying the same thing. The world economy is not robust right now. There's a lot of concern and caution in the air about how we're going to, what the next couple of years is going to look like. I personally am optimistic, but I think that is being reflected in the Tesla share price. But when we say that, to your point, Brian, Tesla trades at 185 times earnings. To put that into
Mm,
some perspective, Nvidia, which is the penultimate high flying stock, trades at 50 times earnings. So Tesla is more than three, almost four times as much. And then when you compare it to Ford or GM, they trade at 8 times earnings. So there's a lot of optimism and a lot of encouraged people around the subject of Tesla. So the robotaxi and the cyber cab, people have been saying for a long time that Tesla needs a low cost entry model. Where
yeah.
do you think that the cyber cab could become a repackaged entry model, an on ramp for people that want to own a Tesla that can't afford the Model Y, which is at over $40,000?
Right. So that is a great question, and one that has been on everyone's mind for the last year and a half. We thought that the Cybercab was going to come out in two versions, one with a steering wheel and one without. In April of 24, Reuters reported that the compact car has been canceled, to which Elon immediately responded, no, fake news. You don't know what you're talking about. But they were correct. The suppliers were notified that Project NV91 had been canceled. That was a Cybercab with a steering wheel. And because I've had a chance to interview the designers, the people who actually designed and built the Cybercab, I got to ask them the questions to find out, is it as simple as just putting in a wheel? And the answer is no. The real estate under the dashboard's been taken up, but it's not just that, it's every part of the car. So if I was to give you a car that only drives itself, how much horsepower would you need? Would you need 200, 300 horsepower? Of course not. You don't want to accelerate like that. Without a steering wheel, it'd be very uncomfortable. Realistically, 100 horsepower is all you need. So you'd need to change the motors. Well, if you change the motors, now you have to change the cooling system because the battery is going to get too hot. And for that matter, you're going to need a bigger battery. So the cooling system gets bigger again. All the systems, and once you've got to that point, if you're going to be pulling high, sharp turns, you're going to need different suspension. You're going to need more robust brakes. Everything scales up. It's a completely different car. It just wouldn't work.
Interesting. So do you see a low cost Tesla in the future?
Well, today
It
is
doesn't
June
sound like it.
30th.
I'm sorry.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. Today's June 30th, and we've been told more than once that in the first half of this year, Tesla would show us or reveal or actually start taking orders for more affordable models. Plural. They said plural. So we were expecting that by today, but maybe even today, technically the last day of the first half, we would see those, and we haven't. We haven't seen leaks. We haven't seen spy shots. We haven't seen them testing on the road. And there are ways you can test it in secret. You could just put camouflage on it and test them in Michigan. In Michigan, no one bats an eye at a car in a camo wrap. Manufacturers do that up there all the time. But we haven't seen anything that would indicate those are coming. He said they're coming. We don't know what they would be. But I think it's entirely possible that Tesla's definition of more affordable doesn't necessarily match yours and my definition of affordable.
All right, so that's a great synopsis. So let's get back to autonomy. How is the Robotaxi performing on the roads in Austin? Now, this is a car that is fully autonomous. So there, as I understand it, there are like 5 levels of autonomy. What do I have? Is it level 2 or level 3?
And what you have is level 2 because you're not allowed to take your eyes off the road. These levels were established back when there were no levels, back when all 5 levels were more or less imaginary. So they had to draw some arbitrary lines, and it turns out the place they drew the lines doesn't always make sense. So what you have is level 2 because you are still required to be attentive. Level 3 is you don't have to be attentive, just ready to take over if it notifies you. And currently, there's only one car on the market that does that, and the way it does it is a joke. It is a high-end Mercedes. It can only be used on the highway, but only up to speeds of 35 miles an hour. Show me that highway. I'd love to see it. It can't do it if the sun is ahead of you in a way that might blind the camera. It has to have a lead vehicle in front of it. It's basically a glorified traffic jam assist, but you can take your eyes off the road.
So what
So,
level
yeah.
is my software at now? I'm a level 2, but what iteration of the software am I at? I know the last time you and I spoke, I said, "Oh yeah, I'm getting a new software update. I'm going to get software 13," and you said, "Well, I doubt if you've gotten 13." But so, where is Tesla in the evolution of full self driving, and where are the beta testers on that continuum?
So, folks like you and I, depending when your car was built, if your car was built after mid 2023, you probably have hardware 4, which means you're on Tesla's software 13.2.9, which is the latest greatest. If you have the previous hardware, it's running a slightly different version, but it also works very, very well. What I would call it is I would call it level 3 because if it would let you take your eyes off the road, which it doesn't because there's a camera watching you all the time, if it would let you take your eyes off the road, I have absolute confidence it would not do anything crazy. There are times when it would make me a little uncomfortable or other drivers a little uncomfortable, but not that it would do anything dangerous. And I say that because I've been in an Uber and I feel uncomfortable constantly with some of those drivers. They're very aggressive. Sometimes they're distracted. And unlike you or myself or an Uber driver, these cars don't get tired. They don't get intoxicated. They don't get distracted by their cell phone. And they can look in all directions at all times. They can do incredible amounts of math to predict where cars are going to be in a few seconds. And it works really well. So I'd say practically it's at level 3, but Tesla doesn't want to take the liability for you not paying attention.
Well, I have this bad habit of occasionally answering a quick text while I'm driving. I know I shouldn't. It's against the law. I try not to, but being human, I am subject to error. And I will look down and text. You're exactly right. The car beeps at me. It says, please pay attention to the road. Now, can I get from I've got hardware 3. Is there an upgrade path for me to get to hardware 4? And am I going to need to do that in order to be able to get true level 4, level 5 autonomy?
So that's another great question. The question has been getting louder over the past year. For the longest time, Tesla had said, Elon had said, your hardware 3 is more than enough. It will definitely work. And as of the last earnings call, he said, well, maybe it won't. But if it doesn't, we will upgrade it. If you've purchased the FSD package in full, we will upgrade it at no charge. Can it be upgraded? The short answer is yes, of course, anything can be done. And I've seen skeptics say, well, no, the connectors are different. My friend, you can buy an adapter. That's not that hard, especially if you're going to buy 1 million of them. So that's not the issue. It may be that your car, when it is complete, when it is ready to go out to everybody, that hardware 5 exists. You may have the opportunity to leapfrog past hardware 4 straight to hardware 5. And the reason they won't do upgrades before it's time is because until it's completely solved, we're not sure exactly what needs to be changed. Maybe the processor is fast enough. Maybe the side cameras are good, but the front cameras need to be crisper. We just don't know until it's done. You have to overshoot the mark, figure out what works, and then start scaling it back to see what you can make it fit.
Brian White, a phenomenal conversation. So interesting. Can you stick with us? We've got a hard break we've got to go to, but I'd love to continue this conversation. I really would like to get into Neurolink with you. Have you got time you can stick with us?
I can sure do that for you.
All right. Stay with us. Brian White is on the line with us talking about Tesla, everything Tesla. And it is a phenomenal story. And I just cannot wait to see everything that has been predicted coming to reality today. We'll be back right after these words. Stay with us. So, Brian White, thank you for sticking with us. One question that is puzzling to me right now, how do you assess the full self-driving software compared to the average human driver?
So it's easy to compare the mistakes it makes to what I think I would have done. You see it do something like a weird lane change, or maybe it doesn't understand that the lane it's in is going to end and then it has to get over at the last minute. And you think, well, I probably would have done something better. Well, probably is the important part. And what too many of us do, and I'm guilty of it as well, is comparing its worst moments to our best moments. And even though on a 100-mile drive, it might do 3 things that I look at and say, well, I probably would have done something different. Okay, call those mistakes if you like, but I would say that while it made 3 mistakes I wouldn't have, it didn't make 20 mistakes that I would have. It didn't lose track of who's in the blind spots. It didn't, it knows the limits of its capacity. It knows how quickly it can brake. It knows all those things where you and I have to guess. We have to kind of ballpark it. So I would say that in its current state, at least in areas with extensive data gathering, like every car that's been sold for the last 7 years has a full sensor suite. It's been gathering data about how humans drive. If you don't have it, if you didn't buy that software, it's still there running in the background, trying to guess what it would have done and comparing it with what you did and still learning. We are all teaching it. So I would say that at least in the areas with extensive training, coastal cities, big cities, it drives better than the average person. And in less populated areas, I just finished a 5,700-mile road trip, drove from the Pacific Northwest out to Michigan and back by way of Reno. In some of those areas, I think it doesn't drive as well as a human, but still better than a new driver or a young driver.
Is there data that compares a human driver to the FSD software? I mean, clearly they had to get regulators to go along with a truly driverless car in Austin, Texas, even though there is a virtual driver watching the car on a big screen, if I understand correctly. And in some cars, they have a safety person in the right seat. I'm not sure what their function is, other than just to provide some comfort level. But from a data standpoint, where are we?
So that's pretty opaque. We don't know a lot of the numbers that we'd like to know for any of these companies, not for Cruise before they shut down, not for the Uber and Lyft autonomous programs before they shut down, the Argo AI program. We don't see any of that. So we have to kind of guess. What we do know is that, there have been no fatalities yet for Waymo, for passengers, for riders, and the same is true for Tesla, but again, they've only been at it for a week, so a bit premature to be popping the champagne just yet, but it looks like it is already safer. And one way you can know this is because if it wasn't safer than a human, these big companies with a lot on the line wouldn't be very likely to roll it out.
I think you're spot on. Now, Waymo uses LiDAR and radar. Tesla uses vision, which I think is brilliant. And they've got millions of hours of video that they have taken and screenshotted from the cars. And my understanding is that they use the video to train the computer how to program the full self-driving software so that they adopt best practices when you come up to a stop sign and someone approaches the stop sign from the right who has the right of way, and the computer makes the call based on what the best practices that it sees have been. At what point do we say that, well, the software may not be perfect, but it is much better than a human driver? And we may not save 45,000 lives a year on America's highways. We're only going to save 22,500. Where is that line? It seems like there's a notion that the software has to be perfect before we're going to turn it loose on full autonomy level 4, level 5. When does the changeover occur?
Yeah, that's a very good question. In terms of the training data, I wanted to address that real quick.
Yes.
You're right that what it did that is so revolutionary is the current version of the code wasn't written by a human; it was written by the computer, basically. And what that meant is the old system said, if then, if straight line with dashes, then keep going straight. If car in front, then slow down. And the new one takes an approach that I call art. That's like music. If I asked you to play along with this song, it would be very difficult for you to explain what you're doing, but you just know how to do it. And as a result, the old code was 300,000 lines of code. And then they said, okay, here you've got all the things you need. Write the code yourself. And it came in 90% smaller, 30,000 lines of code instead of 300,000 lines of code. It's pretty amazing. The downside is you can't look inside the box and see what's in there, but you can test the heck out of it and see how it behaves. And they know enough that it works. Now, to your big question, and this is the much harder question, is how close to perfect do you have to be? We've talked about the March of Nines, and the March of Nines in this context is a very intoxicating drug to software developers. You start your driverless car program, and in the first year, you get 9% of the way done. That's amazing. Guys, when will you be done? At this rate, a couple of years. The next year, you get to 99% done. We're going to have this probably next year. Then you get to 99.9. You're like, well, it's closer. It's a lot closer to 100, but it's not there. And you just keep adding another 9. You never hit 100 because 100 is impossible in a world filled with humans doing most of the driving. So how many of those 9s do you need? Well, Elon says it needs to be, I think, 100 times safer or 1,000 times safer than a human driver. And I've seen people talk at events where I've presented, ask in the Q&A, I agree that even 10 times better is good enough, but do you think for the public it needs to be 10,000 times better, 1,000,000 times better? What will make the public happy? Because if it's 45,000 deaths a year on U.S. roads today, and you reduce that by 1,000%, you would by 1,000x, you would still have a death every week occurring. Would people freak out if someone dies every week in this country from autonomous driving? And the answer is, I don't know. I think that's a good question for folks in the chat and for your listeners to share their thoughts.
Well, in the chat right now, there are, and I'm watching them, and I really appreciate the people that have interacted with us and continue to interact with us there. And just know that I am reading what you say on getter.com. And the comments go like this: Tesla has to go gas or hybrid. Then someone else says it's a superior energy source. Best car, stupid power source. Everyone wants a Tesla gas car. What is it, Brian, that people have this love affair with an internal combustion engine? and cannot mentally make the switch from gas to electric. What am I missing here? I frankly, I try and keep an open mind, but it's hard for me to get my head around it.
I think it's just traditionalists. There's nothing wrong with liking things that you're more familiar with. I think that's a very human thing to do. For a long time, my brother said he would never drive a car that didn't have a carburetor. Fuel injection, that's for the birds. I'll never do it. But then, of course, you reach a point where carburetors don't exist anymore, and you realize fuel injection is fine. It's just as reliable, maybe more reliable, gets better mileage, all that. And then I had another friend who said they would never drive anything but a stick shift, but all the cars that he liked were automatic transmission. He tried it, he liked it. With an electric car, they are comfortable, they are smooth, they are quick, they are fun. And a lot of the concerns that people have, well, I don't know where I'm going to charge. Where's my nearest gas station that sells electricity? I don't know. Is they haven't had the experience, so they don't know. They can't know what they don't know, which is that every day I leave the house with a full tank of electricity. I never get up and have to run to a doctor's appointment only to realize I'm on fumes because I plugged in overnight. And the cars are smarter than us. If I get home and I'm under 50% state of charge and I don't plug in, my car sends me a notification saying, I think you meant to plug in. That makes it foolproof, even on days when I am quite foolish. So the biggest thing that sells electric cars, but specifically Tesla cars, is butts in seats. I had a friend who refused to drive my car because he knew that if he did, he would buy one. And he was right. He eventually did go do a test drive and place his order that day because they're just better. They're cheaper to fuel, and they don't have as many moving parts. A V8 engine has hundreds and hundreds of moving parts, any one of which can fail. At some point, one of them will. An electric motor has one moving part. It's
Well,
so simple.
I'll be celebrating the third anniversary of my car this month in July coming up, and I can tell you that I have taken it to the service center 0 times, not one service call. I did have my steering column, the yoke, as I have in the X, started to delaminate. And I just sort of mentally said, well, there's nothing I can do about it, just grin and bear it. And then one day I thought, well, no, I really shouldn't grin and bear it. I'm going to call Tesla and see what is up with it. So I dialed the 800 number. A very polite young man answered the line. And as I was starting to describe the problem, he interrupted me and he said, oh, Mr. Gordon, don't worry. We know about that problem. It is a known defect. Make an appointment, bring the car in for service, and we'll replace it free of charge with a new and improved steering yoke. So I made the appointment, and to my amazement, it was about 3 weeks later. And in a week, I got a phone call from a guy. He said, hey, this is Billy Bob. I'm with Tesla Service, and I'm headed to your house if you can see me and loan me your car for 20 minutes. I've got your new steering yoke, and I will install it free of charge if I can just do a house call. I was blown away. He came, he replaced it, no charge. He blew up the tires on the way out, sort of did preventative maintenance. This is the only service call I've had in 3 years. I think it's just mind boggling and phenomenal. Paul is on the line from Michigan. That is Detroit Central, where the internal combustion engine is made and manufactured by the big three, GM, Ford, and Stellantis. Paul, are you an auto worker by chance?
I work in the industry.
So tell us.
I'm not sure what you mean by auto worker.
Well, you work in the industry. That's it. Are you with one of the big three?
No, not directly.
Okay. Well, what do you think about our conversation, and what are your thoughts on the Tesla?
Well, a couple of things that you've already mentioned. Like, first of all, the whole supply chain is in China, so that's a big problem right there, just practically. So you know how we've moved our pharmaceutical supply chain to China? We're moving our energy source to China. If we don't produce energy here and we move to alternative energy, then you can see what can happen.
Well, I think you bring up a very important and valid point. I have been among the chorus that have urged for a decoupling with China. The fact of the matter is, they have been able to do it faster, better, and cheaper than we have been able to do it. But there's another side to that argument also, and that is that they do not have labor laws that protect their workers. They do not have the same value for human life and humanitarian uh, sympathies that we do. And so they are also
Yeah.
willing to pollute along the way. So, of course, they're going to be able to do it cheaper than we do because we
Right.
have labor laws
But
that protect our workers. So, Brian White,
yeah,
what do you,
and
what's your response to
I
that?
just want to make one comment about that before that goes by.
Sure.
I hear that a lot, that they do it faster, cheaper, and better, and that kind of thing. But that's not really true, because they basically, when you deal with a communist country and an economy that is based on state-run industry, they're subsidized. Okay, so you have a free market competing against a subsidized industry. So you're not comparing apples to apples. So it's not that they do it. If we had billions of dollars to develop, let's say this supply chain, then we would do it faster, cheaper, and better. So
Well,
they're not. There's
as a
nothing faster,
consumer,
cheaper,
I'm
or better
happy.
about what they do.
As a consumer, I'm happy for the Chinese government to supplement
But
the
no,
and help
you're
my
not really,
cause.
because you're not really, because up front it's better, faster, and cheaper, and then when they run all the competition out, which we've seen in industry after industry, then they own the market, and they're not better, faster, cheaper anymore.
Now
Right?
we've gotten to the heart of the argument.
You're
And
at their mercy.
all right, Brian, what
Yeah.
say you?
Okay. Absolutely. So on the supply issue from China, I've got great news for you. For the vast majority of EV makers, the most important parts are no longer made in China. Tesla, Rivian, Lucid, even Ford and GM make all their motors in the U.S. The batteries, Tesla makes almost all the batteries used in their cars in Reno, Nevada. I was just out there last week. And the rest of them they make in Texas. Michigan just opened their first LFP battery plant. It is U.S. battery supply is coming online fast, and it's great. These are big, important, sophisticated things that are critical to it that are finally being made here, and we love to see it. In terms of the China subsidizing, that's something that they used to do very aggressively, and now they do a lot less. And I've seen people say, yes, China is selling these cars for cheap, but they're doing it while losing money. And I point out that almost everyone in the world selling electric cars is losing money because they're trying to gain market share with as the caller pointed out rightly, with a not necessarily very mature supply chain for these parts. It wouldn't be a few billion to build out the supply chain. I think it was Bloomberg who estimated it could be upwards of $1 trillion to build out the supply chain, because it's not one part, it's every part. And a lot of companies like Tesla, Rivian, Lucid, and others have been working on this for years, and they're doing their best. But it's a monumental problem. It is huge in scale. Tesla's even gone one step further and said, we're going to build our own lithium refinery, which is already operating in Corpus Christi, Texas. They are pushing what is possible, and Tesla especially. Tesla has, if you pull up the list of most American-made cars, Tesla has the top 4 spots, and I think the number 6 spot. So they are extremely American-made because Elon recognized the need to do that. Now, if you go to China and look it up, you'll find that it is a very Chinese-made car for that market because they have a factory there and a supply chain there. And if you go to Europe, you'll find that their Model Ys are extremely German-made because the supply chain is right there near the factory. They try and localize everything. So the caller has very real, very valid concerns But the good news is they're already being addressed. And while you don't want to offshore your energy needs, that's the beauty of electricity is you can put solar panels on your own roof and power your car. I'm not able to dig for oil where I live. There is none here, and the old logging companies hold the mineral rights anyhow. So, but I could, in theory, put solar panels up and power my car that way. Because in my opinion, uh, energy uh, energy independence is the most American thing you can do, because then you're really free.
Paul, thank you for your question. And Brian White, thank you for your time this morning. It has been such a thrilling conversation. Our live chat agrees. I'm told that the batteries suck, and what are you going to do when your warranty runs out? You're going to have to buy an expensive replacement for the battery. True, but it's coming. The battery costs are coming down, and JB Straubel is recycling Tesla batteries. So I expect in the near future you'll be able to get a replacement at much more affordable prices. No conversation we have lights up our chat like Tesla does. Thank you for joining us, Brian White. We've got to take a break, and we will be back right after these words. Brian, thank you so much for sticking around and all of your insights. One thing well, two things I really want to spend just a couple of minutes on before we let you go. Optimus. It is a humanoid robot. Tell us about it. Where is it, and how soon can I get it?
Well, there's things I know that I dare not say, but the big overview is a few years back, Tesla said, we've been working on a robot, and here's what it looks like. It's terrible, we know, but we want the best and brightest in the world. And boy, did the applications come flooding in. Since then, we've seen some truly stunning developments. This thing walks like a person, moves like a person, has hands like a person. And the last time I saw one in a presentation was at the We Robot event in California a few months ago, I guess 8 months ago now. And it was bartending. And on camera, you looked at it and go, well, that's just a guy in a suit. And then you notice the hands and the wrists are, no, that's a robot. That moves like a person. So what can it do today? Well, we don't know, but we know it's nearing production. And it can do kind of anything a person can do in theory. So if you have a factory and somebody in racking is out that day, you don't have to grab someone from wrapping and train them to rack. If one of them knows how to do it, they all do. Every job, you only have to train them once. And because it uses the same kind of artificial intelligence learning that the cars use, that all of it uses, they can come back to you and say, hey, I think I have a better way to do this task that's more efficient in ways just like a human would. And so these are expected to cost about what a car would cost. Now, we don't know which car. It might be a $30,000 car. It might be a $70,000 car. But these have already been performing tasks in the factory. And it is reasonably clear based on their hiring patterns that we've seen published online, all the job postings, that these are expected to enter some scale of production, perhaps by the end of this year.
I can't wait. How do I sign up? You suppose there's going to be a program for Tesla loyalists that we could get first dibs? I want my own little buddy robot who can do repetitive, menial, and dangerous tasks, as we're told. And you say it's going to cost the price of a car. I'm understanding it's going to be less than $20,000. The price of a not very good car, I'm thinking, but hopefully a good robot.
Well, it'll certainly cost less than that to build at scale. Because if you look at, when Tesla made this announcement that they wanted to build robots, they were laughed at. And then within 6 months, there were a dozen companies working on it. And today there's about 300 companies working on it. The problem is, just like we were talking about with the scale of Tesla being able to eclipse Waymo, because Waymo doesn't build cars, the same is true with the robots. Of all the players out there, only one of those companies is actually a manufacturer. So when they built the first robot, they didn't. How do you know where to make it strong, where it's going to break? They put it into the crash test software that they use for cars and simulated crashing the robot so they knew how to build it strong without making it extra heavy. They're using all the competencies they've gained in manufacturing, so when it's time to make them, they've built it from day one for manufacturability. If you look at the Atlas robot by Boston Dynamics, it's fantastic. It can do parkour. It can do a million things that I don't need, don't want, and can't pay for. And the darn thing is so complicated, if they could build them at scale, they'd still cost $1 million each. That's ridiculous. I don't want that. I want a robot that's as simple as it can be and still get the job done at a low price.
Well, I want to be the first in line. I just can't wait. I think it's so exciting. The possibilities are limitless, and it will also help cure one of the biggest diseases in America today, that one being loneliness. We'll have to see how it all plays out, but the prospects are phenomenal. Now, Brian, before I let you go, Neuralink, give us a minute, a 2-minute primer, if you would. I think that nothing that Musk has done will have an impact like Neuralink for humanity and people who have been struck with paralysis or a physical infirmity. Tell us about Neuralink based on what you know.
So the idea is your brain is just a bunch of electrical signals going around through the meat. And when there are a breakdown of the nervous system between, say, your hands and your brain, that can make it impossible for you to do anything. So the first thing they've done with it, they insert these microscopic filaments into the brain with laser precision, not even surgical, but robotic surgical precision that doesn't cause harm, and that can actually feed signals in specific and get signals out. So what they've done, I've had a chance to have some conversations with patient 3. His name is Brad. He's in a private group that I'm part of on X, and he's able to participate in our discussions. This is something he couldn't do a year ago. I guess 2 years ago. I think his surgery was in December of 24. And before that, he would communicate with the world. He was nonverbal. He would communicate with the world using eye gaze, where he would point his eyes at letters on a keyboard or symbols on a keypad to communicate. And now he can type. Now he can move a cursor with his mind. And a lot of people will say, I don't want someone in my brain. Good. I don't want them in your brain either. I hope you never have to need this. But if you do need it, I'm glad it exists, because I want you to have some kind of life back that you deserve. In the future, this could perhaps restore sight. We've already got talk of it being used to restore hearing, even in people who were born without it, because that part of the brain is still there and it can still process signals. So this would, and eventually you could use it for someone who has a severed spinal cord to basically put jumper cables from below the spinal cord to above it, so it could just skip that part that's broken and get the message to the brain. This, like you were saying, stands to fundamentally improve so many lives.
Well, it's just brilliant, and the prospects are enormous, and the benefit for those who need it are phenomenal. And those are big words, but I think that we understate the impact for the people that have been afflicted with paralysis or the inability to speak or to see or to hear, along with a number of other infirmities that it can positively impact. Brian White, fascinating conversation. Thank you so much. You've been so generous with your time and your knowledge. How do we follow you? How can our listeners keep track of you and engage further with you if they choose?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm on YouTube, and X is where I hang out mostly. On both of them, you can find me at FutureAzA. It's future, the whole word, FutureAza. And to the people asking, what does that mean? It means it was the best name I could find that was available across all platforms. So got to make up a new word.
Well, reality
and I
has its...
publish 15 videos a week. Yeah, I publish 15 videos a week. I do 5 guest appearances at a minimum. I'm busy, but it's just what I do.
Well, and you do it well, and you're an encyclopedia of knowledge on technology. Brian White, follow him at FutureAzA on X and YouTube. I watch you just about every day somewhere, Brian. I run across you. It's been a pleasure. Come back soon and come back often.